you don't actually necessarily know which route your life's going to take, and you just have to follow what feels right.
Welcome to Island Influencers, where we share stories of successful business owners, experienced professionals, entrepreneurs and community leaders based or with influence in the Isle of Man. This podcast is brought to you by Thornton Chartered Financial Planners, because great financial planning has the power to change your life. Now here's your host, Sharon Sutton.
Welcome back to another captivating episode of Island Influencers. This week, I have the pleasure of introducing you to the one and only John Keggin, Managing Director at Island Escapes Limited. John's story takes us back to his upbringing within a family deeply woven into the fabric of Manx tourism. Imagine generations warmly welcoming guests to the picturesque The Tower Hotel in Port Erin. From a young age, John always wanted to own his own business, and in 2018 his dreams came reality with Island Escapes. Drawing from a wealth of diverse experiences across marketing and operations, John paints an authentic picture of the highs and lows that comes with forging your path as an entrepreneur. He bears his soul, revealing moments of the utmost fulfillment and the challenges that tested his mettle. Life has a way of throwing curveballs, and the pandemic that swept the globe was a true test of resilience for many. John candidly shares his personal encounter with burnout, a consequence of navigating the storm as both a business owner and an individual. John's a driving force, propelling the Isle of Man's tourism to new heights. You won't want to miss the pearls of wisdom and stories that John Keggin unveils. So grab your favourite headphones, find your cherished quiet corner, and join me in episode 96 of Island Influencers. Welcome, John Keggin from Island Escapes to the Island Influencers studio. Thank you so much for coming along on such a marvellously sunny day, because we know that it's always sunny in the Isle of Man, right?
It is. Well, I mean, that's the joy of the Isle of Man, really, and you don't come here for sunshine all the time. And
no. Yeah, I was being quite ironic because to just put a timestamp on this, we're recording this after the weekend of the Manx Agricultural Show, the Royal Manx Show, and we had a bit of mixed conditions, and we're in August, but hey, like you say. Well, thank you, John. I wonder if you'd mind telling us all about, I almost called you Jake there. Is there somebody called Jake Keggin in your family?
My dad.
Yeah, I thought so.
He's known as Jake to a few people, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So, yeah,
well, John Keggin. I wonder if you'd mind telling our listeners just all about your past, really. How come you've got to this point where you're running Island Escapes and seemingly being lauded as one of the businesses that is really putting the Isle of Man back on the map? Yeah,
I mean, it's quite an interesting sort of story, really, and a pathway that's sort of got me to this point. I can't say it was planned, but I did certainly grow up in a tourism environment. My great-grandfather built a hotel, actually, in Port Erin at the turn of the last century, and my whole family grew up in that sort of tourism environment, with my grandfather and then my dad taking over that hotel, and they saw the sort of rise and fall of mass tourism on the Isle of Man. I mean, we can all look back at some of the old photographs of the place and packed beaches, and a completely different tourism to what we have now. But they were the heydays, and my family, they saw that rise and fall towards the end. And by the time I was born, it was massively in decline, and my dad made a difficult decision to close the hotel. And they ran, the hotel was called the Towers, and it was in Port Erin.
Yeah, I remember it.
And it overlooked the bay, and it was in a great location, and I do have some early memories of it, and sort of being still there and being open, but then it closed in the early 90s, and then eventually my parents made the difficult decision to demolish it, and that was a story really across the island.
I mean, they made such an effort. I mean, they used to run, I used to play in like Manx dance groups and stuff like that. They used to put lots of shows on. They would showcase all the local bands and local artists that were on, we'd all go down and on a Thursday night or something and perform for the tourists. And they really made an effort, didn't they, back then?
That's it. And the whole of Port Erin Promenade was hotels. And now, if you look at it, it's just transformed completely. And, you know, that's just a reflection of what's happened, really, with that sort of cheap package holiday and people travelling away to warmer climes on those package trips to Spain and so on, and that was where the decline was, because back in the old days, tourism was very much sort of about that type of thing. The Isle of Man was like the place people bizarrely went for a beach holiday or to just literally not do very much. And it's very much changed now, and that's never going to come back. That type of holiday is never going to come back. Those people who are growing up always go away abroad, and it's turned completely round, and we'll come on to that. But so I was obviously growing up, and I was at school, and there wasn't really much hope for me continuing in that family business, because it was no longer a thing. My parents just decided to just have a smaller B&B in the end, and they ran that for a number of years. And so I sort of did what many people do when they leave school and go looking for a job, really. And at that time, it was in the early 2000s, it was quite easy to walk into sort of a financial services business and get working, really. And that's basically what I did, and gained a lot of experience in that time. And really, it was kind of lots were learned, and I suppose I understood a lot more about the world of work, but I always knew that I would like to run my own business. And I don't know whether it's just this family ingrained thing that I've grown up with.
Yeah, possibly.
The fact that my parents ran their own business, my grandfather did. It seemed strange for me to be employed, but I did it, and I definitely enjoyed working, and I sort of trained in a sort of marketing side of things. Yeah,
interesting. I thought I was going to ask you, when you were employed, what were the sort of key things skills that you picked up from there? Yeah,
so I think what I learned really was about sort of the key things that I guess was sort of the relationship management, looking at how sort of a business operates, and the marketing side of things, really. And the company I was working for was going through a bit of a restructure, and it got to a point where they decided that they were going to lose some staff, and as part of that restructure. And so at that point I took redundancy, and that was in 2013.
Yeah, that's brave, actually.
And I'd been working in finance for 10 years at that point.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because up until that point, I thought, well, this is what I do. And this is kind of what I'm probably destined to do. But it was actually that point of being made redundant that you think, actually, I work really hard and I've just been made redundant. I was like, well, what is this all about? You know, like, am I actually valued here at all in the first place? So I started questioning everything about my life, I suppose, at that point. And thought, actually, do I want to work in financial services for another big corporate where potentially I'm just a number? And I thought, nah, I don't want to do that. I've got a bit of safety blanket here. Got a bit of money. I've been paid out, and I could go and do anything that I want to do right now. And it was at that point that I thought, right, okay, let's go and do something a little bit different.
I like that, turning a challenge into an opportunity.
Yeah, and that's what it was, but it was mostly out of the fact that it had been quite a difficult 6 months as well, where I was staying on, and I'd been kind of made to stay on.
Oh gosh.
And it was kind of like the last thing I wanted to do was to walk into another role where it would be like that again. So I decided, no, I'm gonna go, and I went travelling. So I went to New Zealand, travelled around for a bit,
Fantastic.
And came back to the island. And all the way through sort of my time working, outside of work, I was doing a lot of outdoor stuff. So I was kayaking, and that was my main thing, hiking, doing a bit of climbing, and I qualified as an outdoor instructor.
Gosh.
As well, but it was never meant to be a career. It was just,
No.
I was just doing that on the side.
And how did you do that locally, or?
Yeah, I would do that locally, and it was my release from my days working in an office, and that's what I was doing. So naturally, once I was given the freedom to sort of no longer have the 9 to 5, I thought, you know, I'll do a bit of that for a bit, and I did some freelance work in the outdoors, which I loved, and it actually took me down to Cornwall because I also felt, you know, I'm gonna have a bit of a break from the island, try sort of living somewhere else.
Yeah.
And Cornwall was quite appealing to me. It was somewhere that I'd always wanted to go to. And then I went on holiday there with a friend, and we went and did some kayaking, some surfing, and really enjoyed the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I thought, do you know what? I'm going to try and live down here for a little bit and see how that goes.
I mean, it's somewhere else that's challenging for employment, for everything you read. It's fishing and tourism, and that was challenged too, wasn't it? But
yeah, and at this point, I was starting to think, actually, I would quite like to sort of start my own business now. And when I went down to Cornwall, I went to St Ives, which was, you know, is a beautiful part of the country. And I got a job working for a holiday lettings agency down there. And it was an interesting job because it was like an office role where I was able to use a lot of the skills that I'd gained over the years, from like relationship management through marketing, all of those different things. Yet it was in quite a fun industry where you were dealing with people on holiday and you were managing holiday homes in St Ives, and I was doing a bit of the outdoor stuff at the same time. And I just thought, this is really good. But it feels very natural for me. And we were just organising and the whole operations down there. But when I was there, I was thinking, this place is buzzing. It's absolutely buzzing, and the locals are loving it as well. What a nice feel. It feels like every day's a holiday down here. Why is this so different to the Isle of Man? Because being from the Isle of Man, I was thinking, have I just gone back in time, and this is what my parents and my grandparents used to see down in Port Erin? And I thought, yes and no, because it's actually a bit of a different type of tourism. And it's very similar to what we see in the Lake District when people go there. It's British tourism today. But why does the Isle of Man not look like this? And I started to ask these questions, and I thought, you know, this is quite interesting. I wonder if this business model would work back home on the island. And did a little bit of research into visitor numbers and what was going on, and I thought, well, it's probably worth a bit of a shot. The island's an affluent place. There's potential property owners there who might want to let their property out with us, and we could try and market them to tourists, because from what I could see, yes, the Isle of Man did have a few holiday homes here, but they weren't marketed particularly well. There was nothing really going on.
Lots of different bitty things, aren't there?
Lots of different bitty things. Yeah. And if I was a visitor looking into the Isle of Man, how easy would it be for me to go, oh yeah, I'm going to stay there because that looks brilliant, and then just book it online and do it? It looked very difficult. And so I thought, right, okay, what we're going to do is I'll set up a small business where it can maybe be a bit of a lifestyle business for me. I'll manage a few holiday homes, get the winters off, and see what happens, you know. That was my plan at that point. And I thought, you know, if I get 10 properties that I can manage, then that'll be quite good. And we can see if we can get a few visitors over and manage manage their stay, and try and promote the island as a bit of an alternative to Cornwall, to Devon.
Sure. And what year was that?
That was end of 2017.
Right.
And so I came back with a bit of a mission at that point, and I remember just sitting there with my laptop trying to think of like a company name and what I was going to do. How do you even go about setting up a business? Like, I don't actually know. And so Visit Isle of Man were doing an industry day in February 2018, and I sort of set that as a little bit of a target for myself. So I had 2 months to maybe get a few business cards and a few flyers and see if I can approach a few people at this event. And that's what I decided to try and do. And so I got the company registered in February of that year. And I went along to this event with a few business cards. And
so how did you think of the name?
Island Escapes. I think it was... The company I worked for was called Cornish Horizons.
Yeah.
And similar kind of holiday cottage companies across the UK have got these sort of names that kind of resonate with holidays and so on. And the name came about quite easily. I was just chatting with a few people, and I just thought, Escape to the Isle of Man.
It's a great name.
And that is essentially what we do. And it is all about that. You're coming to the island, you're escaping. And it's broad enough that it could adapt. We could adapt it if things changed.
Yeah.
You know, if Island Escapes, you could delve into doing different things. And that's what I thought. You know, it's not saying Isle of Man cottage holidays or something very specific. It's Island Escapes. It could change if the business evolved and changed. And so I started to start explaining Island Escapes and the concept to people. And it was quite hard work to start with, because I was just some guy turning up with a business card and saying, I'll manage your holiday home for you. I'll do the cleaning. I'll do everything. You know, it was like almost like this one-man band. I'll do marketing. I'll do the cleaning. I'll do the maintenance. We'll sort it out. And I definitely got a few looks of like, okay, well, you know. But then a couple of people were quite keen on the idea because they thought, oh, you've got someone here who's quite enthusiastic, hands-off approach.
Young.
And and because it's a real hard work managing a holiday home.
I can imagine.
There's so many elements to the whole thing. So I basically went and I acquired a few properties, a handful, but I needed a handful to launch the website, which then happened in June that year. And then I launched this website, and then nothing happened. We got no bookings, and no one had actually heard of us. So it was one of those things that then it was a slow start.
Yeah.
And that's the thing when you set a business up. There's a lot of work at the very, very start, but that work pays off in the end. But you have to put in the time to do so, you know. And I put in a lot of time at that point. The hours were immense.
Not servicing properties though.
No, just trying to actually get the thing off the ground.
Sure.
But then in time, we gradually got there, and you know, in the initial stages, we were using platforms like Airbnb and Booking.com just to try and get the name out there and get the.
That sounds quite expensive if you.
Yeah, absolutely.
To pay for that.
We've got a luckily, and this is where I think when you do set something up, you bring your experience with you. And down in Cornwall, they were using some software which integrates with loads of different booking channels, so you can advertise a property on your own website and on Airbnb, TripAdvisor, Rentals, whatever. And if a guest books on any one of those platforms, it blocks the availability out everywhere. Yeah. So the technology that we were able to adopt into the business helped us really at that very start point, and allowed us to grow as time went on. Fast forward a year or so, 2019, we started to actually see some traction. We were up to about 30 properties by then, and people were starting to buy into the idea. And I was starting to think, this thing's got legs here, it's got potential, but we're growing a bit quick.
So who was in the business with you at that point?
At that point, it was still just me and a handful of housekeepers that I'd managed to sort of employ on a part-time basis. And then my friend Jamie returned to the island, and he basically helped me do some housekeeping, and so he started doing pretty much all the housekeeping, and then it kind of just started to grow, and I thought, right, okay, this has actually got potential here. Then by early 2020, that year was looking sort of almost alarmingly busy. Things were starting to go quite well, but I knew we had massive challenges then to try and scale the business. And then a couple of months later, COVID happened.
Yeah, it did, didn't it?
Which changed everything completely. I thought at that point, right, we're gonna go under. This is like all the hard work. I've just wasted 2 years of my life because there's no way the business is going to survive this one at all. And so I just kind of like pretty much resigned myself to the fact that it was pretty much all over as we were refunding everybody who was due to stay with us.
Yeah.
And a month or so went by, but end of April, early May, and there were signs that the island might start to open up. And I thought, okay, this is interesting, but the border's going to stay closed. And somebody said to me, why don't you try and just see if some locals will do some staycations, and perhaps they had some holidays planned and they would want to go and do something.
Yeah, we'd all been locked up at that point.
Really? Is anyone going to travel from Douglas to Port Erin to go on holiday, or from Ramsey to Peel? And then I thought about it and I thought, well, everyone just wants to do something.
Yeah.
And the island was experiencing amazing weather at that time. And I remember talking to a guy called Andy Skillen, who's a graphic designer, and he'd helped me at the start with some graphics and design and so on. And I said to him, I've not got much money at the moment, but could you help me put a marketing campaign together, and we'll see if we can just try and promote a few staycations. So Andy did some good graphics for me, and we basically just put it out there on social media. Yeah. Discover your island is what we said. Discover your island, have a staycation this summer, 10% off for locals, and we did that, and the thing just took off. Yeah. It was actually quite amazing, and then it became kind of like the thing to do, and people would go to tell their friend, oh, I've just been on a staycation there, and they said, oh, I've been on staycation at this property, and then next thing we had people doing tours of our properties, doing staycations, and it was great. I mean, the volume of business we were doing then compared to now, was far lower, and we didn't make loads of money, but what it did was it actually got the message out there, and I think that was the key thing. And suddenly we had hundreds of people, locals, all staying at our properties, who suddenly became our ambassadors. Yeah. And so at the time things started to settle down and we saw the island reopening, they were the ones sort of talking about us in a really positive light, recommending us to friends and family. And
it's true.
And then we suddenly had a few of them approach us and to say, we had such a great time staying in your place in Laxey. We're thinking of buying a place. Would you manage it for us? Of course, yeah, we'll do that. And so, strangely, in hindsight, what I thought was a terrible time actually turned out to be hugely beneficial, not for making money at that particular point in time, but for the long-term effect on the business. Because when we emerged from that, we'd also tested everything. We'd tried and tested our processes. We'd gone through our cleaning processes, for example. Because it was such because of the pandemic going on, we had to make sure our cleaning processes were incredibly robust. And what better time to try that out than in a pandemic where cleaning is essential, even more so than it is the rest of the time. So there was loads of different things we were trying out when we were maybe only operating at 20% of our capacity compared to where we are now. Yeah. And that was phenomenal. So it was interesting to actually just do something like that and then come out the other end and go, right, okay, I think we're ready now. Yeah. But bizarrely, it was COVID that actually helped us get ready for that, for the island's reopening. And
did it help you as a team as well, pull through and come closer together? I know it certainly did with us. I started
to recruit more people as well through that process. Yeah. And yes, it did. We employed a young lad called Nick who'd just come out of university as a graduate. And he was one of those people who graduated in 2020.
Oh,
and
goodness.
He didn't really know where he was going to be going or what he was going to be ending up doing. The government put on this sort of graduate program for like a placement. Yeah. And it was giving people an opportunity to go and take a placement, and it could lead to different things. And so I took him on because I knew I needed staff, but it was 2020 and I couldn't afford to take the risk of employing someone at that particular point in time. And he jumped at the chance to join the team 3 years later, he's still with me as a very much a senior member of the team now.
Brilliant.
I think COVID definitely helped us kind of form a very good bond at that particular point, and helped him because he's grown with the business.
Interesting.
And I think that's been quite interesting in itself, and it's been great for me to watch that development.
Great, good for you.
And yeah, so here we are now. We've got
Yeah.
a team of, there's 8 of us full time, and we've got 40 housekeepers part time, all employed.
Gosh.
We employ the housekeepers because we want them accountable for to us,
Yeah.
not just to have people coming in who perhaps are self-employed. We actually have them fully part of our team, because the housekeeping element is just as important as the rest of it, really.
It's essential. Yeah.
And yeah, so we manage just over 110 properties across the island.
Wow.
And yeah, with a nice solid team, and that's where we are. So a bit of a long-winded answer to your question, but that's bringing you to where we are now, really, from the very start.
Yeah. It's a fascinating story. I know, it's brilliant.
And I actually,
such a success story.
I actually think I couldn't have done this if I'd been a bit younger. So I was mid-30s when I set Islandescapes up, and I felt I needed that sort of 15 years of life and work experience to set up this particular type of business.
Yeah, to maybe know who you are.
Yeah, and to be able to do it, because it is such a diverse and complex operation. And I think that's one of the things I definitely would say is, I needed that background. And also, I think it's just a case of, you don't actually necessarily know which route your life's going to take.
No.
And you just have to follow what feels right.
No, I know. And again, we're talking about the timing of recording this. The A-level results were out yesterday.
Yeah.
Next week, GCSE results. Our youngster's waiting for his results as well. It is a time where everybody's kind of thinking about careers and where they're going to go, and you don't always know, do you?
No, and I didn't like school particularly, and I struggled with it, and I was actually lacking in confidence quite a bit when I was younger, and I think it's just a case of, it doesn't really matter in the scheme of things. What matters most is kind of following your heart and actually maybe doing what feels right, and things will generally work out in the end, especially if you're prepared to put some time into whatever it is and follow your actual passion. Yeah,
That's great. Thank you very much. So, if you don't mind, I'll move on to our normal sort of run of things. But my day job, financial planner, and I always ask guests this, and I get a fascinating range of answers. But what was for you earliest memories of money growing up?
Yeah, so I think
We've heard about the Tower Hotel.
Yeah, so the hotel was obviously in a decline when I was growing up, and so money was certainly not something that was flowing in the family. It wasn't handed out, you know, and it was definitely seen. My parents would see the importance of saving and actually not necessarily splashing out. We never had massive like luxury holidays or anything like that. You know, it was a fairly kind of basic lifestyle, but that was good. You know, I enjoyed that, and I've got some great childhood memories. I remember learning to drive and wanting to learn to drive, and I remember Mum and Dad said, because I was 16 and I was like, right, I want to learn to drive as soon as I possibly can. And they were like, well, if you're going to learn to drive, you need to go and get a job. And I thought, okay. But I did, because that was what I needed to do. And I think at that point, it was kind of, right, learn to drive, it's going to cost me money. And I think at that point, it was kind of like, starting to earn money felt quite good. And I think it was at that point I thought, right, actually, maybe one day I could run my own business too, because it's quite good, this earning money business.
Do you think those lessons that have you carried those forward to how you are today, do you think?
Yeah, I would say so. I think I'm not particularly massively financially motivated, in the sense of that doesn't motivate me. Like, I don't sit there dreaming about having a flash car and a massive house or anything like that. But what I do think is important with money is it gives you options. And so that's a driver for me, is the fact that if someone said to me, right, should we go on an adventure and should we go and do a road trip across like America or Canada or head out to New Zealand again, and it's going to cost you 10 grand. I want to be in a position to be able to do stuff like that, create memories and make life easier. And so I feel that that money for me is about trying to make your life easier in the future.
Yeah.
And I think that's something like my parents kind of have believe in as well. You know, it's about just making yourself financially secure, financially independent. And so that's a driver for me, really, is about planning for the future.
Yeah, it's very insightful. Thank you for sharing that. So of all the things that you've done throughout your life so far, what's given you the most fulfillment? I mean, you can say from both a personal or career perspective, if you like. In fact, I'd be interested to hear both.
Yeah, I mean, I think from a career perspective, doing what I'm doing now is probably the most fulfilling. Okay.
So, well, congratulations for one thing on winning your short-term rentals Short Sea Award this year. That's amazing.
Yeah, I think that to me was a real recognition of what we've actually achieved in that period of time.
You got that in London, I believe.
Yeah, so it was a national award.
Yeah,
and it was
phenomenal.
It was in recognition of the customer experience, really, for the short-term rental industry, and we were up against some massive players in the market.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that the Isle of Man is such a small place, the importance of us looking after our customers is something we take very seriously here, because you just can't afford to mess up and deliver a shoddy service. We haven't got thousands and thousands of other customers if we start making a bad name for ourselves. No. There's some places in the world where, if you upset a couple of customers along the way, it doesn't matter, there's thousands more coming down the road where they came from. So that's been at the heart of what we do, and I think the whole team know that, and so it was definitely a huge team effort. So that was something I'm really very proud of. From that side of things, to actually see some of the team members develop from when they first started to where they are now, that's given me quite a lot of satisfaction, really.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Wonderful. We were talking about this before we started recording, but for any existing or aspiring business owners, entrepreneurs, I'm sure you got loads of tips. What would be your number one tip? Yeah,
so I think really having somebody to talk to is probably a key thing. I find it, or I did find it quite lonely at the start, where you feel you're on a bit of a mission, but all the time, whenever I've worked anywhere, I've always had a manager or somebody that I could look up to, or go for a coffee or go for a chat and talk about like my work objectives, talk about whatever.
Yeah.
And when you actually own a business, you can be quite isolated, and I've got a lot of respect for anyone who sets a business up, because it's a bit of a leap of faith. And so my tip would be to find yourself somebody, like a mentor particularly. They don't have to necessarily know your business inside out, but someone you can just offload to and have a chat and have coffee every now and then, and just have a chat with, really, because it's a hard work, trying to set a business up.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's therapy, like having a podcast, just listen to lots of other business owners. It's therapy for me.
No, it is definitely. And I'm always happy to chat to people as well who are in that position and they're thinking of setting something up. Because I've been there, I've kind of done it, I've gone through the whole rough end of it, and it does take a few years. It's only now I feel like I'm discovering my life again. Yeah,
sure. But you were mentioning before when you came here to St John's Mill, last time you were here, you were on the business incubator course that they have?
The micro business scheme was so I went through that scheme in early 2018 when I set the business up, and there was like 15 people on there in their room, and we all had different business ideas, and we went around the room, this is my idea, and occasionally you bump into those people, and they and it's nice to see. But that course was really good because it just kind of like made me realise, there's all these different things I need to think about, like opening a bank account, and what am I going to do about tax and all the different things, because you don't, this is all things that you have to learn along the way.
You don't,
submitting an annual return, setting up a limited company, it's all, it was all new to me.
You don't get it by osmosis, do you?
No, exactly. So it's quite funny being back here and just thinking, that was when I was just downstairs from where we are now.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. So what do you do to relax? Do you still do the kayaking?
I do a little bit, yeah. Not as much as I used to, but I do like the outdoor lifestyle. I do try to get off the island a bit because I find it's the only place I can really switch off when I'm here on the island.
Escape?
Yeah. Much as I love it.
Shouldn't laugh at my own jokes, sorry.
Much as I love the island, I feel like once I'm away from it, I can't really do anything. I have to leave the team to it. Yeah. If I'm here on the island, it's too easy to kind of go, I wonder if this has been done, I wonder if that's been done. And I know that when I'm not here, I've got no control over it anyway.
I think you'll find most business owners are the same.
So it's a bit like that. One of the things I started doing towards the end of last year was started to meditate and to start thinking about mindfulness. So I got to the end of last year, and I'll make no secret about it, I basically overloaded myself. I think what happened was we'd had so much had gone on since the setup of the business. Then we had COVID. Yeah. We bounced out of COVID, and then 2022 was our busiest ever year because it was the first full year with no restrictions and no, and the island went mad. We had loads of people stay with us. I think we had, to put it into perspective, I think we had 25,000 guests stay at our properties in 2022 from like a few hundred.
That's astonishing.
So it went a bit mad. And we've got two sets of customers. You've got our owners and we've got our guests. And constantly, every day, 7 days a week, you're getting bombarded with information about this guest needs an early check-in, this guest needs this needs the... And at that point last year, I was still very much involved in the operations. Got to October and I was completely burnt out by the time we got to the end of the season. And I just needed to stop. I needed to stop, and I was like, I couldn't switch off, and so I started reading about like mindfulness and how to just focus on the now and the present, and try to engage in not thinking about the future and worrying about what next year is going to bring. Yeah, and because that's what I would end up doing. I started to have anxiety about, oh my God, how are we gonna cope with getting busier and busier and busier? How am I gonna even do this? And I just stop, focus, and so I actually went to see a guy called Mike Cooley, who you might have.
Oh, I've heard of him. Yes.
He practices mindfulness, and it was very insightful about just focusing on the present and to spend a few minutes a day just clearing your mind and not thinking of anything. And I stopped and I did that, and I actually went on a silent retreat with him for 2 days where I didn't talk for 2 days, and it was
I know somebody else who went on that.
And the idea is you just literally clear your mind. You sit there, you meditate, you do sitting meditation, you do walking meditation, and it's completely, if someone said to me this a year or two ago, I'd have been like, really but it just shows you like actually what, say, running a business can do to your brain, and you think, actually, I will try that and I'll see how that works. And I actually find that it does work very well, because everybody has a limit and everybody has got a stress bucket, if you like, and some people can tolerate a lot and other people can't tolerate too much, and I reckon I can tolerate quite a lot, but it got to the point last year where it was overflowing. And so now I'm very conscious that I need to stop that from ever happening again, and not getting burnt out and not letting the stress bucket overflow. So there's a few things I do every day. Try to go for a walk. Yeah. and clear the mind there.
How long's the walk? How long do you go for?
Try to go for about an hour walk each day. Break it up during the working day.
Yes.
And I try to start the day with some meditation and a good range of exercise as well. And this year has been a much healthier year than last year was, because you're starting to put some discipline in.
It's marvellous to hear that. Good.
But it's so easy, you see, for business owners to end up working stupid hours. You know, where you don't discipline yourself.
No.
You don't work 9 to 5, and you'll be sat there looking at your emails at 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah, it took me a long time to learn that, many years.
Yeah, and I learned the hard way. I was doing that last year, replying to emails at 10:30 at night, checking my phone for emails at 7 in the morning.
Yes,
it's not healthy.
No.
And so keeping my life in balance is something that I've become more aware of, and it's something I would try and practice. I would preach that to other people, like before you learn the hard way, basically. So I definitely felt myself going into overload, but I was able to kind of recover it because I was curious to know why it was happening.
Gosh, so, I really appreciate you sharing that, John. That's very generous of you. Thank you. So what are the best things about living in the Isle of Man?
I think it's a bit like what I would say to the people who'd say, what's the best things about why I should come on holiday to the Isle of Man, really? It's a great place. We've got a lot of things to do on our doorstep.
It's kind of unfair asking you that question, because I'm
just going to try and sell the Isle of Man. It is a good place to live. It's everything is close by. We have a great sort of outdoors. It's a beautiful place. It's very
even
peaceful.
when it's sideways rain.
Even when it's sideways rain. Yeah, I think as well, it's actually easier in some ways to set a business up on somewhere like the Isle of Man than it is in other places. You've got access to people in government. You've got access to various decision makers and so on. If you need to ask questions or take a chance, I felt I was more able to do so here than if I had stayed in Cornwall and thought, I'll set a business up down there.
Yeah.
I feel there's more opportunity here to give something a go and people to help you along the way. We've got quite a good community, got a good business community where there's different people to chat to and lots of people who are enthusiastic and get behind you. So I think it's a great place to live, and I think it could be better if more people visited us. So it would be a better place for locals to live if more people came and visited us.
Okay. So what that's a challenge, but what's the opportunity, do you think?
Well, the government talk about trying to increase our population, and they talk about trying to have more people living here. More people will only want to live here if they get here and the place feels vibrant, and you can walk around one of our villages on a Monday or a Tuesday and pop into a coffee shop and have a coffee, and everywhere's not closed. And unfortunately at the moment, when you do sort of step outside Douglas, sometimes on the island it can feel a bit closed and a bit like we don't really, we don't really quite care as much as we possibly could do, and whereas if you go to some other places, Lake District, Cornwall, they'll be buzzing regardless of the weather. And that makes it great for people who live there as well. So I feel that we need to increase tourism on the island to help the overall.
It makes sense.
Overall island.
I hadn't thought of it that way, but you're right.
Because it's one of the advantages as well of increasing tourism is we don't need too much more infrastructure to do so. So the government have got this ambitious target of 500,000 visitors by 2032. Now, to put that into perspective, in around sort of where we are currently, we have about 300,000 visitors a year. So 200,000 more by 2032. It's quite ambitious. But if they were to achieve that, it's not the direct benefit to the island isn't just financial. It's yes, it is, but it also helps the the well-being, if you like, of the locals, because we then will find that all these small businesses that we're hearing are closing all the time. We keep hearing there's another cafe closed or another retail place closed. They might be getting more support, which makes them more viable. And if they're more viable, it makes it a better place for the locals, which makes it a more attractive place for people to come and live. So people will only come and live here if they've come and visited it and gone, oh, that's great. I want to go and live there.
Yes.
So I actually think that we need to take tourism more seriously, because I think it's a great way of us developing the island further.
It's a catalyst almost to do that, isn't it?
It is, definitely. And tourism has changed since the days in which my family were working in the industry. The people that are going off on the package holidays are the people that we lost, back in the day. However, the people that would choose the Isle of Man are the people who are going and holidaying within Britain. And millions of people holiday within Britain. They holiday at home. They go to the Lake District. They go to Cornwall. They go to Scotland. Go to Wales. And we should be getting a slice of that action. So we're not going for that sort of beach holiday type thing anymore. But we need to be going for the people who want to embrace the wet weather, taking their dog on holiday, putting the waterproofs on, and those people that you'll find walking the hills in the Yorkshire Dales, going into coffee shops in Ambleside or Keswick, getting them here.
Yes.
Is what we need to be doing more of, really. Because when they do come, and that's our demographic generally, the people who do come and stay with us, they're blown away with it, and they go, well, why have we never heard of this place?
Yeah. It's a shame. Yeah.
So,
well done for doing that. It's I all have high hopes for the Manxmen coming.
We do, yeah.
On service.
Yeah. And that is going to definitely change the way we travel to the island, and it will be a great experience for people. And I hope that has a massive draw for people coming here. And
brand new ship.
Yeah, one of our biggest assets really is the fact that we actually own the steam packet now as an island, or the government do.
Yeah, your great grandchildren are going to be paying for it, like.
Yeah, but it's that's good, because I think the gateways to the island are the biggest challenges for us increasing tourism, because you can just drive to the lakes, or you can just drive around Britain. You've got to actually get on a plane or get on a boat to come and visit us. So you've got to really want to do it. And the Manxmen will hopefully help people want to do that.
Yeah. Well, that's all be positive about that. Wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Well, thanks for that. That's a well thought out answer to those questions. So what's you and Island Escapes? What have you got planned next?
Yeah. So I think we're just committed to trying to help develop things further. We are increasing the properties we manage. We use technology a lot within the business to try and help us manage so many different properties all around the island. And it's like, housekeepers use a mobile app to check in, start a job, finish a job. We know that the job's been done. They follow checklists. And so we've built quite a robust process there, which means I think we can facilitate the growth of the business. So we manage about 110 properties. I'd like to see that push up towards 200. Yeah. I think the market's there. We're full at the moment. It's August now, and we've been full everywhere since TT, really. And we're pretty busy into September. So the market is there.
Yeah, sure.
We're turning away people. So I think that's positive. There are people who want to come to the island, and it's shifted hugely from the COVID times where all our business were locals. We're now sort of 95% of our business are visitors coming to the island, and maybe only 5% are doing staycations. Yeah. Although we hope that increases during the winter months when the locals tend to just quite like a little weekend away.
Yeah.
But yeah, so our plan is to just do more of what we're doing, really. We are developing a digital guidebook as well for each of our properties, and we're quite keen to collaborate with businesses as well to showcase other businesses in there, and try and signpost visitors to doing things when they're on the island, and actually getting the most out of their holiday and improving the guest experience. So that's kind of our main focus now, is really trying to improve that guest experience.
So
when people
linking
are here,
them to blue badge guides and people like that.
Stuff like that, but also trying to support those local businesses that might be operating cafes or restaurants and activity providers by trying to get those visitors using those providers, because they're here, they've got money to spend. Our core business is accommodation, but if we can improve the guest experience by showcasing what other people are doing,
it's a win-win, isn't it?
It's a win-win. It's because it benefits the island again. It's that whole thing. The money spreads out, and also it helps people just have a great holiday. That's one of the reasons we've got quite a prominent office down in Castletown, is because we want it to act as tourist information, and people come in every day and see us, and they what should we do, where do we go, and you actually pick up lots of little interesting things about the island that you wouldn't have necessarily thought about yourself, because you see it every day. And the fact that you can't find the sign to where the entrance to the castle is, well, I wouldn't have known that, but guests tell us all the time. So
good grief.
And then on a personal level, for me, I just want to take a bit of continue with getting the work-life balance right, really, and just kind of making sure I'm more disciplined with it. But I'd like to do a bit more work mentoring people, particularly who might be wanting to develop their careers or a business idea. Because I've been through it, and I've been through the hard way, and I feel like I've got quite a lot that I could offer other people.
You absolutely have.
So, that's something that I would like to try and do.
Fabulous.
As I get more time.
Yeah, sure. No, okay. Well, obviously we're going to put your contact details in our show notes. And I think there's the Chamber of Commerce. They have they did have a mentoring scheme. I don't know if they still have it. But that's a very worthwhile thing to offer. So moving on to the final few questions that we have. Any books that you've read recently that you would care to share with? You mentioned one on mindfulness.
So Mike's actually written a book called The Treasure House, which is worth a read. And I'm not very good at reading books because my mind wanders, and so this is again something I'm trying to teach myself to be better at, is reading books. But I've listened to a few audiobooks because I find it almost like easier, because I think sometimes, like, when your mind's so busy, actually the physical reading a book can be quite
but somebody else's voice.
But someone else's voice is kind of quite good. So I
find that too.
I listened to Simon Reeve and his audiobook Step by Step, and I quite like Simon because he grew up in a council estate in London, and he has sort of travelled the world and sort of produced all these amazing documentaries. But he always gets the best out of people. That's what I really like, and that enthusiasm that he can, someone will be telling a story, and he'll get behind that, and he'll show that real emotion. And if somebody's got a really sad story, he will actually get a bit upset with it as well, and it shows that real kind of caring kind of side. But I think the fact that I've got quite a lot of respect for people who have kind of made it themselves. And I feel like he's an example of somebody who's made it himself.
Nice.
And that kind of goes as well with kind of that quote, which I know you're going to ask me about what your favourite quote is, but people will forget what you said, what you did, but won't forget how they make you feel.
It's a great quote, that.
And I think that's something that, you kind of, that resonates quite well with me. I'm not saying it's something I'm always amazing at, but it's something that I feel like if you remember that and try and focus that when you're dealing with people, particularly when you're managing people, that's kind of it's kind of such an important thing. And it's the same that's the thing with guest experience as well. It's kind of like, how do you make your customers feel?
Pretty good from the reviews I just saw on your website before you came in. 5 stars on none. I
think that's something kind of
brilliant. No, thank you ever so much for sharing all that. I mean, is there anybody else who inspires you? Or, I mean, you've mentioned Mike Cooley. And
I think other people who have taken the chance to go and set something up and actually try and make a difference and do something positive, because that, and it doesn't matter what you're actually doing. I've met some people who are just mega enthusiastic about what they do, and it could be anything, but I do generally find that people who've got the balls to go and set something up and not just talk or complain about it, but actually put their money where their mouth is and go and do it, they deserve respect for actually doing it, because so many people can talk and kind of go, oh, I should do this, I should do that, but those who get on and do it, it's kind of
respect,
fair play. Yeah, absolutely.
So where can our listeners go to learn more about you and the work you're doing?
Well, if we go to our website, which is islandescapes.im, that's where people can view our website and all of our properties and so on. You can find me on LinkedIn as well. From a personal perspective, if anybody wants to connect and have a discussion about anything, that's fine. We're always keen to hear from local businesses as well who might want to work with us. So do get in touch if anybody thinks that they've got a business that would tie in with what we do, and what we've got a load of people who come to the Isle of Man, and if we can make their holidays better through partnering with somebody else, then happy to hear from them.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, well, we'll put all those contact details in the show notes too. But thank you so much, John, for your time today. It's been a real pleasure listening all about you and Island Escapes. Inspirational. Thank you.
Okay, all right then.
Thank you.